The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is always a preeminent privilege to stand in the well of the House of Representatives to advocate on behalf of my constituents in the 9th Congressional District of Texas, but it is also a greater honor to advocate on behalf of the American people. I contend that no one could have predicted that I would have this great opportunity at my birth, and I'm always grateful to have it, and I want people to know that I appreciate it greatly. Mr. Speaker, on last night, the House of Representatives passed a bipartisan piece of legislation, H.R. 295. This is a resolution that would encourage law enforcement agencies to use body cameras. It passed overwhelmingly, and I'm here today to express my gratitude to the many members who supported this piece of legislation. I would like to start with the leadership. I am honored that the leadership supported it, because without the support of leadership, legislation does not come to the floor. Mr. Boehner, I'm grateful that you supported and allowed it to come to the floor. Ms. Pelosi, I'm grateful that you supported and allowed it to come to the floor. And Mr. Hoyer, I'm honored that we had the opportunity to visit with you about it, as well as other members of leadership, including Mr. Boehner, and that you allowed it to come to the floor. I would also want to mention the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Goodlatte. He allowed us to visit with him about this legislation, and we're grateful that you participated in the process and allowed it to come to the floor. I'm especially honored also to mention Mr. Conyers, the sage of the House of Representatives, the dean of the House of Representatives, and I'm grateful that he has been understanding and given us the opportunity to have this piece of legislation come to the floor in the form of a resolution. There were members who supported this, and they were co-sponsors. I have to mention my very dear friend, Mr. Cleaver. I will say candidly that without him, we wouldn't have been able to succeed. He has been a partner with me on this legislation, and we have worked it through the entirety of the process. I would mention Mr. Ted Poe from Texas. He and I were lawyers together. We were judges together. And he was the first person to actually sign on to the resolution. And that meant something to have his support. Mr. Poe, I'm grateful that you signed on to it as the first original co-sponsor. And my prayer is that this piece of legislation is something that you will be proud of in the years to come. Mr. Lukemeyer signed on to it, Mr. Lacey Clay, Mr. Yoder, and Ms. Clark, all persons who were original co-sponsors of the legislation. And I'm grateful that they chose to allow their names to be associated with it. And I'm grateful to all of the members of the House of Representatives who voted for it, some 421 members. Let me now just focus on the legislation for just a moment and remind everybody that this, in a metaphorical sense, is not the end, it's the beginning. In a metaphorical sense, it is not the closing argument as we might have in a trial. It is the opening statement. And as a Christian, in a metaphorical sense, this is Genesis, it's not Revelations. There are many other things to come. In fact, we have a piece of legislation, the CAM-TIP Act, that is currently pending before the House. And my hope is that we will get some additional co-sponsors on that piece of legislation. But as to this piece of legislation, let me announce that what it does is simply provide encouragement to law enforcement agencies to know that the consensus of the House of Representatives is that you have body cameras. And we ask that you please consider the rationale for body cameras. One, transparency. This means that there won't be disputes about what happened. With cameras, you can still have some disputes. And this is not a panacea. It won't cure all that ails some of our concerns, but it does provide some empirical evidence that we would not acquire otherwise because of the contentions that can be at odds with each other about facts. And by the way, as a judge, I know that you can have persons with the best of intentions who can see the same facts and come away with different conclusions as to what occurred. So this provides the additional transparency. It also provides an opportunity for us to allow this evidence to go into court. It's not enough for the public to see what's going on. Those who serve as jurors, they will have an opportunity to see what happened and base their decisions on more than what one person says as opposed to what another person says. I'm proud to tell you that the piece of legislation will provide an opportunity for people to adjust their behavior. A wonderful thing can happen when the camera's on. People will know that they're being watched and they can adjust their behavior. I'm so honored that the legislation has passed, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak this morning and thank those who were supportive of it. This is Genesis. The revelations are yet to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The time of